Welcome everyone. It's nice to see you all today. I will introduce myself shortly. My name is İlker Özkaya. I'm one of the co-founders of Agile Society Turkey. Here we are broadcasting this webinar from, Ilyas, welcome by the way, from Istanbul, Turkey. Hi to Azerbaijan. And I'm an electrical engineer. As I told before, I'm one of the co-founders of Agile Society Turkey. We have guests all around the world, generally once a month. And this time, an interesting topic, if you ask me, Agile HR, Agile Recruitment. I'm not going to talk too much, and I'll leave the floor to Mia and Thomas. Thank you guys for being with us tonight. So Mia, let me make you host.
Oh, I am maybe screen sharing. Am I?
You can already share your screen, huh? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Just
I'm
trying to get the right slides. Thank you. Need to, as always, just find the right stuff here. Thank you. And thank you so much, Ilke, for having us. And for Turkey, it's nice to be with you guys and to join in. So we're going to talk about Agile recruiting in a nutshell, and it's me and Thomas, as you can see here, and how this might enable you to manage in VUCA. So Thomas, would you like to present yourself a little bit?
Sure. So my name is Thomas Eklöf, and I'm a HR and management consultant working with mostly with recruitment since the last 10 years. And I also co-wrote a book about innovative recruitment, which aims to kind of help organizations to improve in a newer way how to work with recruitment and kind of move away from the more traditional side. So that's pretty much have been my aim and my ambition to continue that journey with the book and also with the Agile Recruiting in a nutshell, to be a more modern way to recruit, pretty much. So I have a background HR recruitment and now focusing on this together with Mia and amongst a few others as well, as we will present shortly.
Yeah, we will. And my name is Mia Kolmadin. I'm a founder of Dandy People. And we work as Agile coaches. We work with agilizing kind of all of the processes and enable collaboration and fast speed development and flexible ways of working. So this is one of the things that is, of course, part of those processes that needs to be agilized. And it's really nice to collaborate and work with people who are not in the agile space to get closer to that actual way of working that we need to refine and re-identify maybe. And these are the people who were part of this process. So Thomas, you had a kind of a short presentation last time. I think we were a group of people who came together as a cross-functional team. It was about a year ago we started. We started in December, I think. And me and Björn are both from Dandy People, and Björn has a background from HR, so he's Agile HR. And Frida Mangen, she's also Agile HR, and she has a pod, which is quite famous in Sweden, Agile HR. And then we have Niels, who wrote the book together with Thomas. And I think you, Thomas, and Frida, you had a discussion before this, where you come together.
Exactly. We met, I think it was now 2 years ago, on a other event within HR community where we both held a presentation and kind of co-aligned and started talking about, as I said, Frida comes from the Agile HR background, and with me and Nils working a lot with recruitment, we kind of found how it could we kind of collaborate with Agile recruiting and making it happen. And because, I mean, she has a lot of requests from others within Agile community to kind of figure out what could this happen with Agile recruitment. And as we've discussed a lot during these kind of 8 months, it isn't a clear cut that it could, but this is kind of what we wanted to present and get us and others started on the topic.
And we were just done with this, I think, then 9 months after getting started working together. So this is like giving birth to a baby. It takes about the same time. But a lot of great discussions, I would like to say. So we have pretty kind of sometimes opposite standpoints on things, but getting together and finding out, so how can we look at this from a perspective of agility and enable people to collaborate and find different ways of working. I think that's been really, really fruitful, those discussions. So the way of working with the poster, of course, prototyping. So Frida had the prototype and we kind of mapped things and started to map together what are the things that we feel need to come into this to pinpoint different areas that we need to focus on and to help people to have maybe new ways of thinking around. So this is usually how it looks when it's becoming something. So starting talking about maybe why Agile. I'm not sure who is with us today. Maybe we have people already who are really into Agile, or maybe we have people from the HR community, which maybe are not so familiar with Agile. So I think we'll maybe just start with this. We have some sound going on. Mette, is that, could you maybe mute?
Yeah.
I think maybe you have a phone or something that's going. So if everyone could mute, that would probably help. But why do we need to work Agile? If you would see yourself in a car, you're driving the car, you want to drive it safely, and you have your friends with you, you're out in a beautiful day, and you're heading towards a goal, you want to do something together and reach that goal in a safe way. So how do you take on this trip? Of course, you know where you're going and you have a safe driving style, and you have a driver, of course, with a driver's license, and you have a car that's functioning, and you can see you can take the roof off. So it's really making this a really nice trip. But of course, what could happen along the way are new things will emerge, things will change as we go along in this journey. So of course, we want to be able to change the plan to take maybe a new route if it's blocked or we got animals coming in. Want to be able to stop and do all these things that makes it a safe trip. So of course, we need to be able to change the plan. So this is where we need to have agility to be able to do that. And we need to be able then to handle the unknown so that we can actually not just base all our decisions on what we know right now, and maybe not just understand what's outside of this, what we don't know, but also actually reaching out to the unknown as quickly as possible. And this is where we need to have agility. And traditional and waterfall practices, they only take us maybe to the first or the second level. So having a different types of mindset might be needed to be able to handle that and to handle ambiguity. So we see things in different ways. And when we are in this complex and fast moving world, we see things in different ways. So enabling people to actually see the same things and take small steps towards something that leads us in the right way. We usually need help with this, and this is usually something that happens when we bring people together from different parts of the organization. We have different mindset, different experiences. We see things in very different ways. So agility might help us here. And we need to find a way to become VUCA robust so that we can act in this world where things are changing, things are complex, and we have this ambiguity happening all the time. So finding ways and using Agile to become flexible and adaptive. And this is the poster. We already had a quick look at this, but as you see here, it has two main areas. So Agile for recruiting and recruiting for Agile. So we're going to look into these two different areas and talk a little bit more about each of these topics. And of course, you can download it for free on the website, as you might already know. So Agile for recruiting. Thomas.
Yes. So what we kind of created first was pretty much what we both think is like the main basics of the poster in general, which is the Modern Agile Recruitment Principle, which is pretty much a rip-off, of course, of the Modern Agile Principles, but so we tweaked it a bit to kind of fit better into the recruitment world, if you say. So the first off is kind of looking for potential instead of readiness. Today, I think most of us, we work with recruitment, we tend to look at the CVs and the cover letters and kind of look backwards a lot more than we do looking forward. So we want to change kind of that perception on recruiting and kind of look forward against, okay, what kind of potential do we see with these individuals? How can they perform in the future? And look for other stuff that it is not readiness, which is the past experience, etc. So look for traits, motivators, capabilities, behaviors, and stuff like that to kind of really dig and understand better what you will perform in the future. Especially as Mia talked about earlier, in a very complex and unknown world, this is even more important to kind of have the right skills to handle that and not just look at the previous experience. But also we kind of added to basic functions, learning and creating value, which is what you really found in the modern Agile principles, which is really about kind of adopting a more dynamic mindset for recruiting and evolving the way you're working with it, continuously kind of think about, okay, is there something here that we could improve? And most of this means that really you need to shift your mindset in just from once a year or even more rarely, which I think is the most common, that you pretty much never figure out, okay, could we do something more with this? So kind of get that into each recruitment process. Okay, is there something we can do better to next time? So get that mindset of evolving continuously is a really good benefit, I would say. And one of the key factors, I think, Frida Mangen is a strong believer of, is the psychological safety. So in the recruitment kind of context, what we mean is we need to also put our head into the candidate's perspective and kind of get them in a more safe environment where they can really showcase their skills and what they will contribute with. So I think a lot of times we put people in a very unusual situations as an interview and other scenarios. So kind of put more safety, but also another aspect of this is also that could we do something more for the candidates? Could we give back to the candidates somehow? I mean, usually more and more today we see that people use tests, personality tests, general mental ability tests, etc. So these tests can also be something to add value, even though the candidates doesn't really find what's the right fit for this role. So we can always give them back something more, which adds more safety, I would say, for the future process. Do you want to add something on this? Yeah.
Well, I'd say, well, you covered it well, but we have learning left, maybe. And this is, of course, being able to experiment and find safe ways to do it. So dare to experiment with your processes, to test new ideas and take parts of the processes and improve them, gather data and involve people in the process and see what are the things that we could improve. And doing this together. So a lot of times maybe we find that we buy a new system, we release that system, we don't really know what's going to happen with it. So treat it as when we are in the complex domain as we are, and do it in small iterations and improve our way of working and our process and how we involve people in different parts of it. And
I always have a bit of a struggle kind of noticing the differences between learning and creating value. Could you help us along the way a bit?
Well, creating value, of course, could be then that we actually are delivering value continuously in the process, so that we actually give something back and we feel, both parties feels that we get value throughout the process, not just at the end. That could be something, but also as an HR department working with recruiting, could also be that we deliver value continuously. So maybe recruiting and finding one way and just pulling through one individual through the recruiting process, and maybe not just doing big batches. So you could think about it in different ways, of course.
Great.
And these are guiding principles that you can use as a lighthouse. So are we meeting these principles today, or is there something that we could adapt and change to become more like this?
Yeah, and that's a good kind of finish. I think, especially for if you look at potential. Of course, we're not saying that everyone should kind of deselect appropriate selection methods, but kind of think more about potential than most of us are doing today. So kind of look ahead at where we're going, what kind of challenges, and what kind of people do we need in the future, and what kind of potential are we looking for instead.
Mm-hmm. And if we move ahead, this is the learning organization. So in this Agile Onion, as this model is called, we look at the different layers and how we can become more agile and having, as we say here, learning agility at the top. So moving from this train for skills, as it says in the bottom, where we have tools and processes and practices, and this might not give that much value. Moving up towards principles and values, and maybe here we talk about hire for attitude, which is a popular term that I've heard a lot. And then also, how can we get up towards having this mindset and building a learning organization and applying and getting this learning agility, so continuously learning and finding ways of embedding that into our processes and seeing maybe the process as such as a learning process as well. This will, of course, not be as visible. We don't see maybe the Kanban board like we have in the bottom, or how we work to actually use these tools and processes, but actually getting more of a mindset in our recruiting process and in our organization.
And here this aligns a little bit with the kind of the potential when we have the hire for attitude. I mean, oftentimes it is, at least in my opinion, that finding people who really are interested in the kind of culture and the values that we represent, I think is crucial for long-term success. I think this is something that also aligns with more looking to who we are, what we do, than not just look at the facts, I would say.
Mm. So of course, aligning values as an individual with the organization and striving for getting the right people in, that's really going to help you move towards using this mindset. And ways of working, agile ways of working for working with recruiting. And as you see here, we have a cross-functional agile recruiting team. And looking at what are the capabilities that we might need in our team to work with recruiting in an agile way. And as you see here, there might not be the standardized recruiting experts only. So we have user experience, marketing, recruiting, facilitation. So if we work in this process in a different way and also applying maybe the different ways of working in different ways, we might need to have a cross-functional team, because it's a complex thing to do these things. So you might need to find people from the organization to bring to your team to work together. And of course, working flow-based, as you do in recruiting, you can't really plan who's going to be in there and how many people do we have, but we want to have them flow through our Kanban board as quickly as possible. So that's usually a powerful way then to work and visualize who we have in the process and where they are at in the process and what are the different process steps. And I think we're going to look a little bit more. Thomas, do you have anything to add on this?
No, it's just, I think this is what I think you should take away really with the ways of working is just try something small to begin with, and try a Kanban board, try any other way really that just seems fun and seems appropriate for your organization, this role or whatever. It doesn't need to be that you implement it for every way, but just start in like a pilot project to get started and see what works for you.
And maybe try to bring people in that are maybe close to you so they can help you and maybe experiment and work with things in a different way so you get those capabilities within your team. And the recruitment Kanban, like we talked about, so one of the first things that you usually do is you visualize your process as you have it today, and to see how these people and individuals then flow through your recruiting process. And this is something that you could do. You could put it on the wall besides those teams that you maybe are recruiting for. So you can have different Kanban boards maybe in the organization and showing people this is what we're working on right now, and involving people who works in the teams to have them part of the process as well. And as it says here, where's the bottleneck? So this is a question you can ask people to see how they understand the board. So you could see here that we have maybe too few people or so that can do the competency test. So maybe we need to help to bring that up to speed so that we can get this flow going through and not having a queue here of stuff. And one thing, of course, you could do is see in maybe what's the flow time that we have here? How long does it take? So maybe we want to shorten that and set maybe a goal. It should only take 2 weeks to get through the recruiting process. How can we enable that? Do we really need all these different steps, the things that we are doing? Could we do it in a different way? So it's really good to start visualizing a process to be able to improve it. Otherwise, it's kind of tricky.
Exactly. Business critical, and I think this is from the book. We wrote a lot about this, and I think for me, recruitment, where we're going in the future, and where we see a lot of organizations are really taking the first few steps. Some have gone further, but what it's about is more about moving away from being too reactive and becoming more proactive in how you go about with recruitment. And then especially within the kind of agile ways of working, is really about finding the contingency to kind of develop and get better along the way. But what we mean here is also that we want kind of recruitment to be more of a importance for the business, that you really understand that this is critical to be successful in the long run, that you get the right people in the right time. A lot of organization really struggles kind of with attracting or selecting or whatever the kind of way they're having difficulties might be. But what we mean here is that you kind of work more long term. You don't really work in one-on-one situations. You kind of work to develop the interaction with candidates, that over time you'll see that people are coming back from just being curious. And it doesn't have to be that you have a job ad online or not, but they kind of, oh, what an exciting organization, what's happening. So kind of keep them in the loop and what's happening and keep them engaged. That will definitely help you succeed faster in the recruitment in general. So treat your candidates like customers, really. And this goes along into the next slide, which what we mean here is kind of look, which is also, I think, part of the original manifesto within Agile, isn't it? People, it's quite different, but I don't remember exactly. It's people over process, I think. Something like that. So what we mean really is kind of understand that the candidates that you face each day is really human beings, and a lot of the times, as I can only talk for what the countries I've been working mostly, of course, Sweden, one of them that is kind of normal. It's status quo, really, that people don't get any information what's happening in the process, and too late they get no thank you. Many times they don't get anything at all. So kind of that mistreating of candidates really affects your brand in the long run. And there's a lot of studies showing that your organization really can lose a lot of money from just not informing people what's happening in the process. So really get into the other side and understand that this is human being, and human relations really goes over the tools and processes that you have or may not have. But also, as I told you before, about kind of the psychological safety is about giving people something more back and engaging them in a different way. So if you have personality tests, I mean, you get a lot of information on people, which really could be helpful. So just giving people, if you have the chance, 5-10 minutes or even 20 minutes to kind of give them something back. I mean, this is something that I think a lot of people really will appreciate and take with them, and then definitely come back if there is another opening that looks interesting for them.
And I think just having this view of just giving back to these people in the process and seeing them as, like it says in the bottom here, don't assume that these people actually want to work for you. So you have to show who you are to get them interested and to understand if they want to understand if they fit in, if they want to work for you and with you, if they maybe align with your values and your behaviors that you have. And if you show the wrong behaviors and not align to the values that you have in the process because you treat them maybe badly because you don't communicate, you don't tell them as it is, or you don't give any feedback, then they might not be interested.
No, exactly, and I think transparency is one key word here. I mean, you really need to show early on who you are as an organization, and this really needs to, on your web page and how people communicate internally, all the way, it needs to be transparent to find true success in the long run with both your culture but also the recruitment process.
So we have 5 minutes now left before this call will end. Ilker, would you like to say something around that?
Well, I wrote down in the chat, but let me repeat it again.
Yeah.
Since we are a non-profit community, we are using free version of Zoom. So when the connection is off, we're going to come back. Please don't leave us. I wrote the link in the chat box, and the password is Agile with small letters. We're going to continue, okay? Thank you for your understanding.
Yeah, I think this is a good time because we're gonna go into the new section. So I think it's better we stop now and come back in 1 minute or so.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. Should we do that, Ilker?
Okay, so give me a second, please. I will start.
I think that's easier.
Okay, I started it.
Good. And we got 15 people back. Maybe we lost 5
21.
then. Yeah. But good to see you guys again. So we'll continue. Okay, good. I have to minimize some stuff here. So of course, as in always in complexity, it's about collaboration and co-delivery. So we have a recruiting process where we have to involve people. And if we work with an Agile organization, we are working with teams. So having the Agile recruiting team joining in and as a coach and as a recruiter, supporting the team to recruit. So facilitating the process and helping to setting up whatever is needed to be set up to be able to get the right people in. And of course, innovating in this process and enabling it to become better for each time. And then, of course, as it says here, warning for bias. And I think that's something that we have later on also, maybe on the next slide. That, of course, we have biases. All of us do. And I know, Thomas, maybe you have something you want to say about this.
You want to see if the slide comes up, or
I will.
Which one? And there is. Yes, perfect. Yes, this is a whole section in our book, actually. So I think all of us, or at least who are working with recruitment, are quite aware that every day, every meeting we do really has many unknown and known factors that affect us during the kind of thought bias that we have. And this is especially important in recruitment, which is very critical for the organization and also for the people that you are meeting. I mean, there is a study that showed that people had a moment to kind of see where the first interview there, I think it was 3 seconds or so, and then they kind of judged the person from those a few seconds in the start and compared that with notes from the interview, who was I think an hour, and pretty much 9 out of 11 factors were the same. So I think that showcased that people are really perceptive to kind of the first appearance that people make, and I kind of either follow that. So if you have a very good positive, then you kind of see everything positive extra much, and also the negatives, you kind of know, no, this person seems very nice because this and that could be very similar to you, or look better than the general, or taller, or many other factors that you're not really aware of is happening. So in recruitment, this is very important to kind of, how can I move away from that, or how can I overcome that kind of bias that we have every day. So I think one of the few kind of tips that we usually give away is involve experts, which means that involve people who are really aware of these situations, and involve experts within the areas you're recruiting. So for the previous slide with co-delivery, kind of involve teams. If you're working with, I don't know, tech, or if you're working with an Agile organization, involve Agile coaches, for instance, to kind of get a better understanding. Okay, what are we looking for? How can we together work better? But also try to think a bit different. So think outside the box, because I think all of us, we have our preconceived ways. So if we approach someone else with a complete different mindset, then maybe they'll give us some further insights that we don't really see. So, and I think one of the main tips I would say is really kind of, if you have a gut feeling that really comes up clear for you, and take it a few hours or even a day to kind of give it some time to figure out what does this really tell me. Kind of analyze that gut feeling a bit more than we do today. This is nothing you need to do every day in every decision, but especially when it is recruitment, it is very important, I would say. So kind of question your reactions and go a bit more mechanical, as you say.
And just as you said, it's very you very easily recruit people who are the same as you, or maybe look the same, or maybe fit into whatever you have in your team. So I think it's also we are looking for, of course, to have diversity in our teams. So maybe you also might want to find someone who are different, who thinks differently. And so it might be really good to think about these things, and how can we be aware of our own biases? What am I biased towards? And unleashing the brain power, how do you do that in different ways? And of course, having this thinking that we unbox our people, not placing them into roles. And here, of course, there's a lot of descriptions, role descriptions that usually are written up front. And it's like a fantasy list of how this new person is going to fit in and do lots of amazing things, and sometimes contradictory. And if we have an agile organization, we might want to find out how is this individual actually helping and fitting into the organization. And also we might have fixed roles that just are hats that you put on. So in an agile organization, we might see things a little bit differently when it comes to roles. So having fixed role descriptions, usually it keeps people in the box, and we want to grow people. We want people to be able to unleash themselves and use their brain power to help the organization move forward. So this is usually something that you have to look into. So removing maybe some of the role descriptions and making them as minimal as possible instead. And look for the
exactly.
T-shape. Yeah, you want to add something?
No, yeah, and I would say I think one of the kind of clearest what really happens when you kind of unbox this is that I think a lot of organizations with people have specific roles is that they not too often don't dare to go outside that box, which means that if there's tasks that kind of lies between these kind of roles, then these kind of tasks go into no man's land, which means that unless people are really go-getters that takes on these tasks, a lot of stuff doesn't happen. So I think that's a big change when you're moving away and unboxing people, is that more people take more responsibility, because you don't just, oh no, this is not my area, this is someone else's. And instead of that kind of mentality, okay, well, we need to figure out how can we solve this together. So I think that kind of mind shift is important.
And it's also important to enable people to collaborate and work in teams, that we don't look at their roles. We look at ourselves as being part of a team and solving a complex problem together with the team and taking our work as a team. So roles might not help them to collaborate. And also T-shape is something that helps people to collaborate, and which is really important to look at. So looking for the expertise that these people have when you recruit them, but also how can they grow their expertise? What are they interested in? And what's the broadness that they have and bring with them, with maybe experiences, different things? And how are they looking at this? Are they interested in learning continuously? Do they see themselves as only experts, or maybe just a team member? And I do whatever comes up, and I'm pretty good at these things as well, not just the things that I have my exam in. So look for this when recruiting. Will really help you to grow the team and to bring out the brain power of not just that individual, but everyone. And then manage the process and not the people. This is something that, of course, needs to be in the way you're working and the thinking. As being an expert in recruiting, you manage the process to improve it and to enable to get the best people in that we need on time, and you don't manage the people. So this is, of course, crucial to think about. And then agile capabilities and not detailed role descriptions like we talked about previously, which is connected to unboxing the people.
Yeah, and I think we had a question. I'm gonna kind of answer that in this, because we also have in the post. I don't think we mentioned it in this presentation, but there is like learning agility that we kind of found after research done by institute called Korn Ferry, which find the 5 agile learning capabilities that are crucial for leaders in the VUCA environment. So, and here we look at, this is something that you could look for in an agile organization when you're recruiting for leaders, especially. And what this looks for is 5 factors. It's mental agility, it's people agility, change, results agility, and also self-awareness. So these kind of 5 dimensions is something that you look for in agile leaders. And if you want to know more about this, have a look at the poster, and there is also a link to the Korn Ferry research that we based this upon as well.
So helping to find and evaluate people who will be good leaders in your organization. And understanding agile organizations, of course, this will be key. And also how are you looking to evolve your organization? Because that will also change maybe how you will look at the roles and the structures and the people you might need also in the future. So working together and figuring out what are the best things that we could do for our organization also moving forward. So adapt the methods based on the context. This is where we had some really lively discussions, I remember. So you need to, of course, adapt them to fit for VUCA, for this complex and fast speed environment that we're in. So would you like to take us through, Thomas?
Yeah. So I think when we look talking about recruitment, then I think this is also something that's important. Is that, I mean, you need to look at really what's working, and with that, what I mean is what kind of selection methods are evidence-based. So a lot of methods we use today doesn't really help us in the recruitment. I think for us, we're working in Sweden. Many organizations work with the cover letter, and most of the research shows that this is really useless, because what it really tells us really is more about how people are good at writing an essay about their lives, not really how they're going to perform in a job role or something else. So we need to really understand, okay, what kind of selection methods are valuable in this recruitment. And this is, I think, for me, what agile recruitment is really about is that you really need to adapt the way you're working. So if you look at the Canva that Mia showed before, this is one way of doing it. And for the next recruitment, perhaps you need to take away something, change something, add something. So depending on the context you're in, which means depending on which organization and where you are in the organization and kind of where the market and how the market is. So if it's hard to find people, you need a different process. If it's easy to get a lot of applications, you need a different process. So it's really about that mindset of always adapting towards what kind of the situation you're in. And also look at what really works. So don't just use methods because you always use them. Look at the science and use tools that really help you in the recruitment. Stop wasting time with stuff that's really useless, and more or less.
And that's then the people, we have a recruiting process that we have been evolving over time in the Kanban board, and different ways of evaluating experiences and working with scenario-based stuff. We have deep interviews, we have different stuff. But here lies the challenge. How do you keep them evidence-based if you actually are exploring and learning, and maybe you are at forefront, finding new ways of doing recruiting, which maybe people haven't been doing before. So this was the challenge that we were discussing. How can you become agile and do experiment, but also still apply these 4 keys in a good way? Yeah,
I think this is kind of the biggest, as you said, kind of biggest discussions we had, because we are coming from 2 different worlds where recruitment really needs to be a bit more evidence-based, which this is not something you can do in a week or so. It takes a half a year or a year even to kind of validate a study that if you're trying a new method. But I think where we landed is, at least for me, is that, yeah, you need to perhaps not know if it's fully validated. But for instance, I think the kind of scenario-based tests, if you call it, or assessment that you use, I think they are very good. And I think this is something you could experiment more with, because usually when we have stuff that's really close to the role that you're going to work with, I think those kind of tests or results give you a lot of insights, and I think those are valuable. But you need to ask yourself really beforehand when you use stuff, okay, what are we really measuring here? So are we sure we're measuring the right thing? And this is something you need to question yourself a lot. And of course, if you could have the chance, if you can validate it over time, that's perfect. But if you can't, I mean, try it and see if it works.
And of course, we look for the mindset as the individual has as well. And if, like previous experiences, how have you solved different complex situations, and are you afraid or not to maybe break some rules? Because we as agile coaches, we have to do that a lot, and also enable safety while doing it and bringing people along. So we look for different things when we are doing recruiting, and the processes and the way of working that we have in Dundee people might not at all fit other organizations. So you have to find something that works for you, right? So this is an example of how a talent and experience team have come together with recruiting from HR and agile coaches. And they have created this purpose to create the best possible environment for the employees to support each other and the customers. So this cross-functional team, of course, are working with more things than just recruiting. They're also coaching and growing people and coaching and finding better ways to collaborate and getting close to the teams and getting close to people in that market and seeing, so how can we fit together with the environment outside as well. So this is a good example how you could maybe find new collaborations into your organization and maybe move away from only being an HR function and only being recruiting, so you can match and find cross-functional ways of working together. Whoops, now I just jumped forward really quickly here. So we've come to the end, and of course, as you see, we have different visualizations, posters, and different stuff that you can download on the website. Agile Recruiting in a nutshell, but also Agile HR in a nutshell if you're interested in these topics, and leadership, business agility, maybe team. If you're starting a recruiting team or an HR team, you can find ways that can support you here. And do we have any questions? I think we had this one too, that this is a pilot project.
Yeah, we're trying to.
Of course,
Exactly.
we would love to have feedback.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, I mean, the poster is kind of the first version of it. So we are more than happy to kind of hear your thoughts. And if you have anything you'd like to add or change, please get back to us with some more of your input. But also, we're looking for pilot customers to kind of help. So if you want to try this kind of agile recruitment context in your organization and need some support from us, we're more than happy to help you.
So Ilke, to use.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I guess we can have a little bit Q&A session, right?
Yeah.
I noted down one question from Marius Flora. How can we make sure we are hiring the right profiles? In other words, what are the most important abilities we should look for in agile environment?
Yeah, I think it was that kind of question I was thinking about before when we were talking about kind of the learning agility. So that was, for one example, really about leaders in an agile organization, where there is research done about this and kind of what's needed to succeed in that kind of environment. And I think, to sum those up, it's really about having that kind of thinking critical about complex problem and expanding possibilities. But also people agility, which means really understanding and relating to each other. So you need that kind of capability to understand how to work in multiple collective environments. But also change agility. I mean, in the constant changing world that we're living in, I think this kind of mindset and capability is important in an agile context, especially. So this is something that you need to find in people and have people are kind of dealing with those discomfort of change. And also kind of having that result agility, which means that delivering results in first-time situations by inspiring teams and exhibiting presence that builds confidence in themselves and others.
And
so this is
that's
example.
For the leaders.
Yeah, exactly. So I think otherwise you always need to go back. So in every recruitment, you need to think about, okay, where are we? In what context are we working in? So look into yourself and your organizations to understand which kind of capabilities it's necessary to succeed in your organization. But Mia, maybe you know other kind of what it would be especially good for an agile organization. What do you say?
Well, it totally depends on what you're doing, right? So maybe you want to find people who are curious, who are interested in learning. Those are good things that you could look for. Otherwise, of course, you need probably to have cross-functional teams because we are solving complex problems, but we could be working with different things, right? So people who can build a T-shape and who can collaborate with others maybe are things that you want to figure out and invite them to see how you can collaborate and work together. But otherwise, the type of competencies that they need to have, that could of course be very different then. And if you're working like in Scrum, of course, then you need those roles, but you can train people for those. So
exactly, I can train for most stuff.
yeah. So
thank you. Any more questions?
Crystal clear, maybe.
But I think like a final tip is really download the poster if you haven't already, and kind of look where you think you could kind of start with stuff small. I think, and just start trying. I think that's kind of the biggest change you could do is just get started with the smaller steps and then take it from there.
And look at maybe what you want to accomplish if you want to start to work agile in recruiting. Why are you doing it? What are you trying to accomplish? And what are problems that you would like to solve? And start to collaborate with people, and you will figure out good ways of doing it together.
Okay. So Mia, Thomas, we appreciate your support to our community. So I would like to thank you once more again. Let's keep in contact. We are trying to do something else as well on our own. Well, we're gonna see what 2021 will bring us. I think 2020 is not a well performed year for all of us. So I hope it's gonna change next year. So we have one month left for the new year. So thank you for having your time and sharing your valuable information for us with us. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us, and yeah, have a good end of the year.
Hope so.
Looking forward to 2021.
Merry Christmas. I don't know if everyone is celebrating Christmas in Turkey, but have a good holiday.
Yeah, and good to see and find new friends and old friends. I can see Elias here too. Hi, Elias.
Yeah, thank you, Mia and Thomas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I hope to see you again.
I'm gonna share the link, okay, with you.
Thanks.
Good evening.
Bye-bye.
Perfect. Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.